An open relationship sounds to me like a cover for someone who wants to cheat. Greetings, my dear friend. The hero of this story has been married for 21 years, and once his wife comes to him with a request to try an open relationship. The husband is shocked and doesn't know what to say. And then the events develop very rapidly. Let's listen to this story and find out how it ends. And you, my dear viewer, put your most powerful like and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so yet. Let's go. I was shocked when my wife asked me for permission to cheat on me at least once. My initial reaction was anger and shock. How could she imagine such a thing after 21 years of marriage? I realized that I had to make a serious decision quickly. I should have seen this coming. Life seemed too idyllic to me, especially at that moment. It was Friday evening, a wonderful summer day. My crown was refreshingly cold when I swallowed it. On the big screen, the Cubs prevailed over the Cardinals, leading by 7-2 in the 5th round. My faithful German Shepherd, Reese, settled down next to my chair and mostly slept, only flinching slightly when I was rooting for the Cubs' success. There was peace in the house. The silence was broken only by the sound of the TV and my rare outbursts of enthusiasm. Tracy, with whom we lived for 21 years, was visiting neighbors, and my 18-year-old son and 17-year-old daughter were visiting friends. It was just me, the dog, the cubes, and a box of Corona in the fridge, as well as a few limes that I ate at the beginning of the day, hoping to spend the evening alone. I take care of myself. The sound of the door opening and closing caught my attention, and I thought that my wife had returned after meeting her friend Lisa. Although I heard someone walking in front of the house, I realized that she didn't say hello as usual, and I was curious. But my attention quickly shifted when Cubs coach David Ross made a decision that excited me so much that I disturbed the dog again. Tracy was in no hurry to enter the living room. It took at least 5 minutes. She seemed lost in thought, perhaps even a little nervous. Instead of greeting me with the usual kiss, she chose to sit on the edge of the sofa next to my chair. Watching the game on TV, I kept my eyes on her. "Can we talk for a minute, Bob?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the noise of the TV. Her words immediately caught my attention. "Of course, dear," I replied. Beads of sweat stood out on her forehead, and her breathing was uneven. I wondered if she was ill or if one of our loved ones had died. "Could you turn off the TV, Bob?" she asked, clenching and unclenching her hands, interrupting the Cubs game. She understood the seriousness of her request. It should not just be a disease, it should be death. I had a feeling of anxiety in my stomach. I took the remote control and turned off the TV. "What's the matter, dear? You don't look well. Did someone die?" I asked. "No, no one died," she quickly assured me. "It's just that it's very important to me, and I need to make sure you're fully focused." I nodded silently, anxious thoughts swarming in my head. We stared at each other for what seemed like an eternity. There was fear in her gaze and something else, perhaps anger. "You know that I love you with all my heart, right? I will never betray you or cheat on you with another man," she said. This question took me by surprise. Feeling my stomach growl from the dinner I had eaten earlier and the 2 bottles of beer I had drunk during the game, I silently nodded in response. "I'm 45, Bob," she said, looking into my eyes. "Besides you, I've only had one man in my entire life, and I'm still dizzy. My friends even call me a hot babe, but I want to be with another man, at least once. I want to experience the excitement of meeting someone new, someone else before we grow old together." I was stunned. I froze in place, unable to comprehend what I had just heard. It seemed to me that a high-speed train rushed past my ears, plunging me into a state of shock. "It can't be!" I exclaimed, jumping up from my seat. "This won't happen while I'm alive!" With wide eyes, she watched me rushing back and forth, feeling like I was in a terrible dream. Maybe I fell asleep in a chair and had a nightmare. "It's not about us, Bob. It's about me and my personal needs," she said, her voice getting firmer with each word. For many years, I have been a devoted wife and mother and have always put family first. But now, for once, I need to focus on myself. I want to feel confident, desirable, and in control of my life. Don't you think I'm desirable anymore? I asked, feeling unsure of myself. I show my love for you every day and always try to make you feel welcome. But I still miss that feeling from you. I don't think I'm hiding it well. You seem to think so, and I'm grateful for that, but my need for approval goes beyond that. I'm still looking for approval from other men for my ego. I am pleased to receive recognition from others, especially from men. The idea that another man wants me is exciting. Don't you feel a sense of pride when a woman looks at you or flirts with you? I'm no exception. I like the attention. You are my desired partner, whom I crave even after all this time. But sometimes I can't help but fantasize about how great it is to go on a date with someone new, to be fed and watered, to feel wanted in a different way. Just for one night, not for love, but for the sake of burning desire. And then I would come back to you, my only true love, to be your devoted wife and mother for the rest of my days. I object. You are my whole world. The thought of you being with someone else is unbearable to me. I don't want you to be with another man. Despite the fact that you constantly confess your love to me, why don't you prove it by fulfilling my request? I understand that this is an important request, perhaps the biggest one. All I ask is to think about it, because it will mean a lot to me, she pleaded. But it would be foolish of me to agree to such a request. I wouldn't even bring it up, I replied. Have I not been a worthy spouse for you and a good mother to our children? Shouldn't that give me some leeway? But you had a lot more partners than I did before we got married. I'm just trying to even the odds a little bit, she reasoned. Actually, we never discussed the number of partners before the wedding. In fact, we only started talking about our shared faith in marital fidelity after the wedding. And just so you know, I've only been close to 4 women in my entire life, including you. So the list isn't very long, I explained. She confessed. I always thought you had more experience than me. It seems like you know a lot more than I do. I've done a lot of research on this topic. I want to do everything in my power to make you happy. Then she asked, So you're still totally against it? I answered decisively, Not only am I categorically against it, but the first thing on Monday morning I will contact a lawyer to start the divorce process. But, I said, noticing the shock on her face. But, she stuttered. I can see that it was difficult for you to ask for this, and it speaks to your determination, but I'm also worried that you might try to do this without my knowledge. I no longer believe that you won't do it, unless you've already done it and are asking for permission retroactively. I promise I haven't cheated on you, she insisted. I took an oath not to change, and I'm sticking to it. But when I objected to her, suggesting that her desire to go somewhere could not be considered treason, since she had spoken about it herself, I realized from the way she avoided eye contact that she was not entirely truthful. Do you really want to put our family in danger even though I haven't done anything yet? What's the matter? She asked, straining her voice. If you finally plucked up the courage to ask, then you've been thinking about it for a long time. It also means that you already have a specific chosen one, perhaps someone who was also involved in the planning process. During lunch and dinner, you have already emotionally betrayed me. Interested, I asked, Who is he? She answered without looking at me. I didn't mean anyone in particular. There was a tense silence in the room, and I stared at her for about 15 seconds. When our eyes met, her face turned a rich shade of red, indicating that she had noticed my shock. You don't need to know, Bob, she whispered. Technically, you're right. But I can't help but be interested in the personality of the person who is destroying what I thought was a strong marriage, I replied. Either you tell me, or I'll start snitching on all your loved ones' friends, boss, colleagues, I threatened. She looked stunned, her mouth open in disbelief. You're not going to do this, she began. What am I missing? My life is falling apart. My marriage is broken up. A little embarrassment doesn't bother me." "What about my embarrassment?" she exclaimed. I shrugged and tried to hide my smile. "What's his name?" I asked firmly. Dan Wilson," she replied softly. "Please, Bob, don't hurt him." "I can't promise anything." I took the remote and continued to watch the game. She sighed in frustration, trying to hold back tears, and then got up from the couch and headed upstairs to our bedroom. I didn't take my eyes off the Cubs game that was on TV, but my mind was on something else entirely. I don't even remember what was shown on TV after that, but I sat in front of the screen for at least 2 more hours. Despite my attempts to hide my feelings from my wife, I was actually completely depressed. I didn't even know that she was thinking about ruining our marriage. Looking back, I realized that I should have been more attentive to the expressions of discontent that Tracy showed towards me and our life together. Over the past 3 months, Tracy has become increasingly estranged not only from me, but also from our children. The first to notice this change was our daughter Sherry, who asked if Tracy and I had any disagreements. I couldn't help but notice that the intimacy between us had decreased. Our once frequent intimacy, which took place 2 or 3 times a week, has been reduced to once every 2 weeks, despite my attempts to revive our relationship. I began to suspect that perhaps some early changes were happening to her. In addition, she began to answer calls outside the room, which was new to her, and constantly texted late at night. When I asked about it, she blamed it all on Lisa, who allegedly had problems in her marriage with Jerry. This interested me because Jerry and Lisa lived only 3 houses away from us, and I didn't know about any problems they were facing. I spent a lot of time over the weekend thinking about possible options. I told Tracy that I planned to start divorce proceedings soon, but first I want to carefully evaluate my marriage and family. It was easy to see why Tracy might be interested in other men. We met when we were both 21 years old, and even at 45 she put on a little weight, despite the fact that she had 2 children. Her ample breasts and toned buttocks combined with her youth gave her the appearance of a 35-year-old woman. I often wondered how I managed to win Tracy's favor, because she was clearly not in my league. Being tall, I knew I was not without attractiveness, but men like me usually don't date someone who was the prom queen just 3 years ago. Our lives intersected in astronomy classes at Purdue University in our freshman year. I loved these classes, and Tracy needed them to pass her science exam. Being a bit of a nerd, I was happy to help her pass the exam, knowing that science is not her strong suit. When the semester came to an end, we were studying in my dorm, and Tracy surprised me with a passionate kiss. I responded with the same passionate kiss. "Wow, I've been thinking for most of the semester that you're not like everyone else," Tracy said when we broke away from each other. "No matter how hard I tried, you never showed any interest in me." "I was interested in you, but I didn't realize that you felt the same way. I was just trying to hide my attraction to you," I confessed. Soon after that, we began a serious relationship. I didn't have much experience in bed, but it was clear that it was important to her. She never complained and seemed to appreciate everything I tried, thanks to my research in this area. While my friends were watching adult films, I focused on studying the actions shown in them. Tracy discovered from the very beginning that this knowledge is incredibly useful. During our second intimacy, my abilities in bed made her lose consciousness. When she woke up 2 minutes later, all she could say was, "I love you, Bob." 2 years after graduating from high school, we got married. 3 years later, we had a son and then a daughter. We were financially stable. I worked in information technology, and Tracy returned to her job as a banker as soon as our youngest child started school. Our son was preparing to enroll in his first year at Ohio State University in a few months, and our daughter was on the verge of graduating from high school. In just 2 years, our nest will be empty. Over the past few months, we have been discussing our plans for the future, including travel. I've been in love with this woman for almost 23 years. On the one hand, breaking up a relationship because she asked me for permission to cheat seemed extreme to me. But the fact that she went so far as to ask for it raised serious concerns. I wasn't naive. I understood that if she was ready to ask for permission to cheat, then she might be tempted to do it without my knowledge, especially since she did not consider it treason, although I did. In addition, she already had an emotional relationship with Dan Wilson, and they planned to commit physical adultery together. The question remained, would I be able to forgive her for this? On Monday morning, I wasted no time contacting a divorce lawyer and made an appointment for Thursday afternoon. All this time, Tracy tried in every possible way to dissuade me from getting a divorce. "We haven't taken any steps yet, Bob, and we won't," Tracy pleaded. I asked her if her reluctance was caused by a sincere desire to avoid divorce or an understanding that it was morally wrong. Tracy looked away and said nothing. "You're still hoping that I'll change my mind and call off the divorce, aren't you?" Despite the hopeful expression on her face, it was clear that our fates were sealed. Just a week after consulting with a lawyer, I handed Tracy the divorce papers. Living in a state where there is no right to divorce and having the same income, it was easier for us to resolve financial issues related to divorce. Since our children are almost grown up, we planned to gradually agree that one of the parents would not be a guardian for a year and would not be responsible for paying alimony. The goal was to sell our house and split the proceeds, ending our 21-year marriage. Unfortunately, everything did not go as smoothly as we had hoped. Tracy hired a talented lawyer who convinced the judge to schedule 4 consultations, and if necessary, even more. The consultant, a woman in her 30s, understood the point of view of my children and Tracy. The counselor asked why a divorce was needed if my wife had not committed adultery, and I expressed to the counselor the same feelings as Tracy and my children. I took her offer to have an affair as a violation of our marriage vows, which caused me to lose confidence in her as a partner. Although I still had feelings for her, I realized that I couldn't stay married to a woman I couldn't trust. She begged me to change my mind, insisting that she was the only one who needed me, but I made it clear to her that I would never consider the idea again. "You seem to be very decisive in your decision, Mr. Rasmussen," the consultant confidently remarked during the second session. "I will continue to support your decision on divorce and recommend to the judge that it take place without any obstacles. Although my opinion doesn't really matter, I consider it my duty to share it. It seems to me that you are making a serious mistake. It seems that your wife did not cheat on you, at least in a physical sense. It seems that both you and your wife are ready to turn to a family counselor to save your long-standing relationship. Your wife is ready to make any necessary changes to keep your marriage and family safe and sound, and this, I admit, touched me to the depths of my soul. My love for Tracy is strong, and this decision was not made without careful consideration. Dr. Baker, it seems that we have different views on this issue. If you consider her promise of loyalty to be a concession, then I consider it as a sincere commitment to our relationship." I reminded her of the vows we had made to each other 21 years ago, the vows she had broken with another man. The announcement of our divorce caused chaos among my relatives. The next day, Tracy's mother called me, who for 15 minutes, as soon as I picked up the phone, hurled insults at me. Her usually calm husband eventually took her phone away from her, trying to sort out the situation somehow. "Bob, are you crazy?" he shouted, shocked by the news that after 21 years of a relationship, I'm breaking up with a woman who has never betrayed me. When I told him about what had happened, I could feel his suppressed reaction. Sometimes he would insert a restrained, "Really?" By the end of our conversation, he looked depressed. After apologizing one last time, he calmly hung up the phone. The following week, I moved into a 2-room apartment nearby. Although my daughter has decided to live with my wife until she goes to college next year, I thought it would be useful to allocate an additional room if one of the children wants to live with me. Although my children were upset that I had divorced their mother, they understood my reasons. A few days after I settled in my new place, I had a friendly phone conversation with my neighbor Jerry. I informed him that his wife Lisa seemed to be involved in my wife's plans with Dan Wilson, and Tracy mentioned that there were problems between Jerry and Lisa. I assured Jerry that I didn't think he was involved in the breakup of my marriage, but I had a feeling that Lisa might have played a role in it. Because of Lisa and Tracy's relationship, I couldn't help but wonder if she was up to something with another man. "Oh, the devil," Jerry muttered into the phone. "So you're suggesting that I might be involved in this too? Does your lawyer provide a group discount?" Using social media has its advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages for me was the opportunity to gather information about Dan Wilson without having to hire a private investigator, which allowed me to save a significant amount of money. Wilson, who worked with Lisa, moved to our local office from Cleveland about 6 months before my marriage broke up. He had a beautiful fiancée who was still looking for a job in our city, so he often had to go to her on weekends. It turned out that he was trying to coordinate plans for his upcoming visit with my wife, wanting to receive a warm welcome in both places. I asked if Tracy knew about Wilson's future wife, but that was all in the past, except for the conversation with Wilson's fiancée. I soon learned from various sources that Dan's wedding had been canceled. His fiancée informed him that he was now ready to be with his former partner on a permanent basis. I must say that his fiancée was the daughter of a very rich man. 2 weeks before the divorce was officially finalized, I celebrated my 22nd wedding anniversary with Tracy. The pain of the loss was undeniable, but as I sat down at the table to have dinner at a restaurant, I became more and more convinced that I had made the right decision. Staying married would mean being constantly on guard and looking for signs of her infidelity. Deep down, I knew I was making the right choice. Deep down, I knew she would betray me in the end. She disliked losing very much and perceived failures as a personal defeat that required immediate action. I took a sip of my single malt beer and went to bed early, celebrating the anniversary alone. But my peace of mind was disturbed when the phone rang at 1 o'clock in the morning and informed me that my ex-wife was calling. At first, I decided to ignore the call, but in the end, I decided to answer because I was already awake. On the other end of the line, I heard her moaning and panting. Apparently, she accidentally called me. From the familiar sounds she made during their intimate conversation, I realized that she was sincere. Despite my initial desire to end the conversation, I couldn't hang up because Tracy was pleasuring her partner, most likely Wilson. I stayed on the line and listened for 2 more minutes until their conversation came to an end. I really wished I had a landline phone so she could hear a nice click when she hung up. At that moment, all doubts about our impending divorce disappeared. On the recommendation of a lawyer, I made it a rule to record all conversations with my wife. Feeling anxious, I called my relatives and turned on a 3-minute recording for my father-in-law before hanging up. I was sure that there would be no more unpleasant conversations in the future. Unlike my wife, I did not turn to other people for comfort until the divorce was officially finalized. It took over a year before I ended up in bed with another woman. During this time, my social life began to decline. A lot has passed since my last date, and having no desire to start dating again, I stopped navigating the modern world. This ignorance turned out to be a serious mistake, because the world of dating has changed radically, and I felt thrown out of life. I realized that my reluctance to date was partly due to fear, the fear of experiencing another painful emotional setback. Tracy's sudden betrayal took me by surprise because I loved her deeply without even knowing about her deception. One significant difference that I have noticed since our last meeting is the change in the attitude of women. Previously, a man often took the initiative, making decisions about who to look after, inviting him on a date, planning it and paying for it. These days it seems that women are becoming more confident in their approach to dating. I often felt like a relic, focusing on the modern dating scene, where women often initiate dates, express their opinions on how the evening should go, and even make a financial contribution. Tracy's selfish behavior was not an isolated case. as I found that women in the modern dating world have more power and focus on themselves. This shift revealed a new dynamic that was difficult for me to keep track of. Many people prefer their own desires to their partner, which often leads to self-centered thinking, which I've been noticing more and more lately. This trend is becoming more and more obvious in my personal experience. I will not deny that I am pleased to be in intimate proximity with a young woman. At first, the physical exertion was excessive, and I was afraid that I had overloaded my body too much. But as I adjusted to the demands, the pleasure became truly amazing. I want to emphasize that Tracy's skill in bed should not be underestimated. But at 45, she is no longer able to maintain the energy and flexibility of a young woman. I may not have the stamina of a young man, but I am very good at other skills in bed. It is important to note that I am not only interested in young partners, since I have dated women between the ages of 25 and 55. I am open to relationships with people of any age. I was usually attracted to women my age, with whom I felt at ease. After a hard week, I made an appointment with a new client on the other side of town. Still dressed in a business suit, I decided to stop by the bar of the trendy restaurant at the hotel. I sat on a high stool and asked for a glass of Glenmorangie single malt. When I arrived, it was already 7 o'clock, and about an hour later, a cheerful group of girls from the bachelorette party occupied the reserved tables. There were about 15 guests in their group, and they were all full of energy. Intrigued, I decided to stay and watch the show, ordering food at the bar. The center of attention was the bride-to-be, a beautiful young woman in her mid-20s with long, light brown hair and captivating brown eyes. I admit, I have a weakness for long hair, so I couldn't resist admiring her curls for a few minutes before turning my attention to the rest of the party. It was then that I noticed another woman, who, as I guessed, was about 40. Judging by her behavior, she seems to have been assigned to this event as an escort. It was obvious that she was looking out for innocent and not-so-young guests. At first glance, she seemed a little fussy in her black skirt, which barely reached mid-thigh and seemed to lift up when she sat down. In the first few moments, she tried unsuccessfully to correct him several times. I couldn't help but smile. She had very attractive legs and noticeable breasts, partially visible under a tight lavender silk blouse. The blouse had a barely noticeable V-neck that went down. Her beautiful skin was on display, accentuated by an outfit that seemed designed for a younger audience than the one she usually attended. It was obvious that someone from the group had a hand in the choice and convinced her to wear this dress, and I silently applauded their choice. The women seemed to be having a great time, laughing, drinking, and enjoying snacks. When the orchestra started playing, several of them got up to dance together. The sight of the women dancing together seemed to inspire the men in the bar, and they began to slowly approach the women on the dance floor and sitting at the tables, ignoring their escorts. After watching for 10 minutes how no one approached the escort, I decided that it was safe and approached her. With shoulder-length dark brown hair and striking green eyes, she reminded me of Jacqueline Bisset in her heyday. No less remarkable was the absence of a wedding ring on her finger. When I asked her to dance, she blushed prettily. She hesitated at first, but eventually agreed, ignoring the teasing comments of the young women standing nearby. When she stood up, straightened her skirt, and took my hand, I couldn't help but admire her courage. The first 2 dances were energetic, and I mentally thanked my ex-wife for pushing me to learn how to dance. The next dance was slow, and I was pleasantly surprised when she leaned towards me. Her hair smelled on her white shoulders, and I couldn't help but feel the warmth and connection between us. I found it funny that Kathleen, who usually does not enjoy the favor of young women, struck up a conversation with me while we were spinning around the dance floor. I found out that her name is Kathleen Franks. She is the aunt of the bride and accompanies the group. Thanking me for the dance, Kathleen got ready to leave after a slow dance, but I took her hand and invited her to join me at the bar. Although at first she protested, referring to the fact that she needed to look after her girls. but I said she could watch them from our place in the bar. While we were watching the girls and chatting, I found out that she was actually 48 years old and had recently divorced after 15 years of marriage. She confessed to me that her ex-husband, a rich man, had left her for a younger woman who was only 27 when they got married 3 years ago. She also said that the outfit for this event was chosen by her niece, the bride. It seemed to her that this outfit was too young for her typically conservative style. I assured her that the outfit suited her very well, and perhaps even flattered her by complimenting her attractive high-heeled shoes. Over the years, I've realized that women often appreciate compliments about their shoes. "Don't you think I look out of place in this outfit?" she asked innocently. "Not at all," I replied. "Forgive me for being blunt, but you look amazing." If I had already appreciated her pink and blue top, now I was even more delighted with the dark red blush she was showing. We talked for about 15 minutes. She noticed that I wasn't wearing an engagement ring and wondered why. When I explained that my ex-wife had never cheated on me physically, she seemed puzzled. I explained that I held traditional views and that my ex-wife had betrayed me emotionally and was going to do it physically, which made me unable to trust her. I believe that you can't really love someone and want someone else at the same time. She said she understood. In response, she stated that everyone has their own personal boundaries. Soon after, she returned to the bride's guests' table. When I asked her to dance again 30 minutes later, she was still ready. After our dance, she took my hand and led me back to the table, where other women and several men were already sitting. Despite the aggressive behavior of some young women, the evening, from my point of view, was a success. I was thrilled when Kathleen invited me to be her date for the upcoming wedding in 2 weeks. I originally planned to go alone, but I decided that it would be more pleasant for me to be with you. She noted that although we had just met, I had already managed to get close to many other guests who would be attending the wedding. Kathleen explained that it would be very important for her if I went with her, because she didn't want to be alone and feel pathetic. Wanting to be sure that she would not feel anything like this, I gladly agreed to accompany her to the wedding. "Tell me what color your outfit is and I'll pick the right suit," I said, bending down to kiss me on the lips. A few voices at the end of the table teased me with "Oh la la." I grinned, and Kathleen blushed again. I loved watching her reaction. When we weren't dancing, I sat next to Kathleen and kept my eyes on The Bachelor. Since some people obviously drank too much, as the father of a teenage girl, my paternal instinct kicked in. I noticed a young guy who was leading one of the girls towards the toilet, which made me quickly and imperceptibly intervene. I managed to intercept the young man in time and prevent him from taking the girl to the men's room. He looked at me with contempt. The elderly man in formal clothes did not make much impression on him, and it became clear that at first glance my appearance did not frighten anyone. But I am proud to keep myself in decent physical shape, because in my youth I had to face a fair share of difficulties. Being prepared for unexpected encounters is very important in order to take action and do the right thing, for example, to protect a girl from possible harm from this guy. I was counting on someone to stand up for my daughter if necessary. "Let go of my hand and fuck off, old man," he growled at me. "She can take care of herself if she wants to." I let go of his hand, but with my other hand I grabbed his head and slammed him against the wall. The force of the impact was enough to crack the drywall, and he was clearly stunned. It seems that he wanted to avoid further escalation of the conflict. The tension in the establishment subsided while the audience watched the quarrel. As soon as I started to take Alicia back to the bachelorette party, Kathleen and the rest of our group came up to us, gently guiding the woman back to the table. I suddenly found myself standing in front of the restaurant manager and other employees, fearing possible reprimands. To my surprise, the manager extended his hand to me and expressed gratitude for my intervention in helping the young woman. "The authorities have been notified, and this guy has been arrested. They may ask you to provide information and tell them what happened, but I don't think you have anything to worry about. Besides, The drinks for the rest of the evening are on the house. Thanks again, he said. It was a good experience. Thank you for being so attentive to everyone, not just Aunt Kathleen, said Wanda, the bride-to-be, when I returned to the table. Kathleen asked how I noticed it, and admitted that I was completely unaware. I was supposed to keep an eye on everything, but I'm terribly ashamed that I didn't notice it, she said. I reassured her by saying that it's easy to lose sight of a young girl in a bar unless you're a professional security guard and a father. Fathers, well, most of us have what I call fatherly vision, I added. I chatted and exchanged light-hearted jokes with the women at the table until they decided it was time to move on. Saying goodbye, I kissed Kathleen gently, glad that her number was saved in my phone. "Find a more private place," one of the girls joked, prompting laughter from the group. Watching the ladies leave the restaurant, I discreetly ran my tongue over my lips, enjoying the shade of Kathleen's lipstick. As I was returning to my place at the bar with a glass in my hand, the bartender noticed, "It looks like you had a good time." I giggled and replied, "Who would have thought? The bachelorette party brought me here. Pour me another glass to celebrate my good fortune before I leave." I left Sean, my newfound drinking buddy, a generous $20 tip for the evening. Kathleen was at the wedding in a light blue dress, and I decided to wear my dark blue striped suit. I was proud of my choice of outfit for this meeting. Together, we were quite a stylish couple, earning the approval of many of her relatives. Throughout the wedding, several guests came up to me to thank me for taking care of Alicia. It seemed that the bride had been praising my actions all these 2 weeks, as if I were a hero. A hero and a handsome man. What a charming combination, said Donna Fulham, Kathleen's sister, the bride's mother, elegantly approaching her to introduce herself before the ceremony began. "I want to thank you for helping the girls a few weeks ago and helping my sister choose a partner." During the event, I had the pleasure of meeting Kathleen's 24-year-old daughter Marissa and her fiancé Ben. When we were introduced, Marissa jokingly remarked, "At least one of my parents isn't trying to find a mate on the school playground." She also warned that her father probably wouldn't approve of me if I stayed here long enough to get to know him better. Nevertheless, by the end of the reception, I was sure that Kathleen and I had a promising future ahead of us. A month after we met, I introduced my children to a new partner. My son quickly accepted her, but my daughter kept her distance, holding a grudge against me for divorcing her mother, although her mother did not cheat on me. The son, on the contrary, understood the situation. He had his own serious girlfriend. One evening we had a serious conversation about loyalty and its meaning for each of us. Life went on as usual, and I was happy with Kathleen. A few years ago, my wife Kathleen and I retired. In honor of our 10th anniversary, we decided to go on a cruise in Alaska. Every morning, Kathleen and I share intimate moments before the start of the day. As we got older, we began to pay more attention to the development of emotional, rather than physical intimacy. Our 3 children are happily married, and have given us 6 wonderful grandchildren. After the divorce, I only occasionally communicated with my ex-wife at our children's weddings and on holidays. She remarried and divorced. Her new husband often accused her of cheating, until one day he found her in bed with his eldest son from a previous marriage. The man was furious, and unable to contain his anger, he attacked Kathleen and his son with a bat in his hands. Unfortunately, the blow to Kathleen's head was too strong, and Kathleen died in the hospital from cerebral edema. The man is currently serving a 20-year sentence in prison. The passion for intimacy with strange men ruined Kathleen.